welcome to my YouTube channel. To all my wonderful subscribers, thank you very much for your support. And if you are visiting my channel for the first time, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, and strike the bell notification so you get an alert as soon as I post new videos. Last week, I introduced identity and access management with EntraID. This week, I'm going to be looking at how EntraID handles passwords. As usual, this promises to be a very educative and enlightening session, and I'm going to drop all the description down below. Go ahead and also add whatever comments you may have, and I promise I'm going to be responding to whatever questions that comes up. Thank you very much as you listen. So in this video, we are going to be looking at EntraID authentication and passwords. So let's get started. What are we going to be talking about here? Specifically, we're going to be looking at authentication in EntraID, how passwords work, how weak passwords can be, what does EntraID do to protect passwords, and how does EntraID evaluate passwords? So let's get started. Authentication in EntraID involves verifying the identity of a user that wants to access a protected resource. It will give the user a secure and convenient way to authenticate his or her identity and give some various methods that will suit different needs and preferences. And some of the authentication methods that EntraID supports includes the knowledge-based authentication, relying on something you know, such as your username and password or a personally identifiable number. In this case, you need to enter this information every time you log into EntraID. This is easy to use, but it can be vulnerable to different kinds of attacks, such as phishing, hacking, or guessing. The next kind of authentication that EntraID supports is ownership-based authentication. That is, this relies on something you have, such as a one-time password that is sent to your phone or an email, an authenticator app that will generate a code, or a QR code that you can scan with your camera. You need to have access to this device or app every time you log into EntraID, and this method is much more secure than the knowledge-based authentication, but it can be inconvenient if you lose your app or you lose your device. That takes us to the third kind of authentication, which is the biometric authentication, relying on something you are, such as your fingerprint, your face, your voice, or your iris. You need to scan or speak this biometric feature every time you log into EntraID. This method is the most secure and convenient of all, but it can be affected by environmental factors such as lighting, noise, or even dirt. So let's see how passwords work. Now, passwords are a common way of verifying the identity of users who want to access a system or a service. They work by comparing a secret value that is known only to the user, that is the password itself, and this value is compared with the value that the system or service stores, that is the password hash. So a password hash is a result of applying a one-way mathematical function to the password, making it more difficult to reverse and making it equally more difficult to find the original password. So when a user enters their password, the system or service will compare the hash of the input with the stored hash, and if there's a match, the user is authenticated and granted access. If there is no match, the user is denied access and may have to try again or reset their passwords. But as we would see, passwords have a lot of weaknesses, making them vulnerable to different kinds of attacks. For example, passwords can be guessed by attackers that use common names, words, dates, or personal information that the user might have shared online or elsewhere. Passwords can also be stolen by attackers that use phishing, malware, keyloggers, or other techniques to capture the user's keystrokes or intercept the communication between the user and the system. Passwords can be cracked by attackers using brute force, dictionary, or rainbow table methods to try many possible combinations until they find the right one. Passwords can be reused by users that have multiple accounts on different systems or services, increasing the risk of compromise if one of them is breached. Passwords could even be forgotten by users who have to remember many complex and different passwords, leading to inconvenience and frustration. So we see that passwords are not the perfect solution for authentication, and we should use passwords with a lot of care and caution. We need to encourage our users to choose strong and unique passwords that are difficult to guess or crack. And of course, we need to create policies that forces our users to regularly change these passwords. And then, of course, we need to also educate our users to avoid sharing their passwords with anyone or even writing them down anywhere. And of course, there should be additional measures such as multi-factor authentication, encryption, or password managers that we can put in place to protect the passwords of our users from unauthorized access. So, what does Entra ID do to help us in protecting these passwords? Now, Entra ID has lots of features that allows admins to better control the use of passwords within their tenant. And some of the features we are going to be looking at are in this slide. For example, we have what is called the global banned password list. Now, Microsoft Entra ID protection team will monitor Microsoft Entra ID security data with a bid to identifying weak or compromised passwords that are commonly used. And the team will focus on finding base terms that are often the source of weak passwords. And now these terms will be added to the global password banned password list. Now, the banned password list is based on Microsoft Entra ID security data rather than any other external source. And the banned password list is used to check the strength of any password that is changed or reset by the user in a Microsoft Entra tenant. Now, this check will ensure that all Microsoft Entra customers will have a strong password. And the banned password list is applied automatically to all users in a Microsoft Entra tenant without requiring any activation or configuration, and it cannot be turned off. Now, the global banned password list is enforced when users change or reset their own passwords through Microsoft Entra ID portal. That takes us to the second Entra ID password protection feature, which is the custom banned password list. Now, some organizations will want to improve security and add their own customizations on top of the global banned password list. So they are going to be adding their entries, and to do this, they use the custom banned password list. They will be adding terms to the custom banned password list, and these terms will be focused on organization specific phrases such as the name of the organization or any abbreviation or variation, the name of any product, service, or project or department of the organization, the name of any customer, partner, employee, vendor of the organization, the name of any location, event, campaign, or initiative that is related to the organization, or any common phrase, slogan, motto, or value associated with the organization. These terms are more likely to be guessed by attackers who target a specific organization or industry. So, by adding them to the custom banned password list, organizations can prevent users from choosing passwords that are easy to crack or compromise. And this list can be updated regularly to reflect any changes within the organization's environment. That takes us to the third password protection feature, which is the password spray attack and third party compromised password list. Now, password spray attacks are a common threat to enterprises, and they tend to try to find weak passwords among many accounts. And Microsoft Entra Password Protection will help us prevent these attacks by enforcing strong password policies and monitoring password submissions. Now, most attackers do not try to guess a single account's password more than a few times because this is going to raise suspicion and is going to trigger account lockout or other security measures. Rather, they use a list of the most common and weak passwords and they try them on many accounts within an organization. Now, in this way, they can quickly identify and compromise any account that uses a weak password while staying under the detection radar. So, Microsoft Entra password protection will help us to protect our accounts by blocking the use of common and weak passwords and alerting admins of any suspicious password activity. Now, as we can see, Microsoft Entra password protection is a powerful tool that we can use to prevent password spray attacks, which, like we've seen, is a common type of cyber attack trying to guess passwords from a list of common or compromised ones. And then Microsoft Entra password protection will be using real world data from Microsoft Entra in order to create a global list of banned passwords that are too weak or too common to be secure. So unlike third-party password validation products that will be relying on checking millions of passwords from previous security breaches, Microsoft Entra Password Protection will focus on the most likely passwords that attackers use in password spray attacks. In this way, it will improve the overall password strength and security of the organization. So let's go ahead to see how Microsoft Entra ID will evaluate passwords. So let's look at the first one. Now, the process of setting a new password involves a series of checks, and these checks will ensure that the password meets the security standards and does not contain any common or easy to guess terms. The system will compare the new password with a global and custom banned password lists, which contain words or phrases that are not allowed in the passwords. But of course, the system would also consider the overall strength of the password, which depends on factors such as the length of the password, the complexity of the password, and its randomness. So, a new password that includes a banned term could still be accepted if it is sufficiently strong in other aspects. For example, within normalization here, before a password is accepted, it's going to undergo the process of normalization. Now, the normalization technique will enable a small list of prohibited passwords that can be expanded to match a larger list of potentially weak passwords. So it will be helping to prevent users from choosing passwords that are easy to guess or to crack by attackers. For example, normalization can convert uppercase letters to lowercase letters, can remove spaces and punctuations, and can replace common substitutes for example, it can replace the word at and replace it with an a. So specifically, if a user chooses a password such as this password, for example, this is a typical password that a user can choose. So the password here is going to be normalized to the word password. Of course, notice that we said that it is going to convert at to the word A, it's going to convert the dollar to the word S, and so on and so forth. So this password in the first case is going to be normalized to the proper name password, and the word password is currently a banned word. And even though the first password there is not compromised, the process of normalization is going to convert it to the actual word, which is password, which is banned, and that password is going to be rejected. So the system will then check the password for any other patterns that indicate malicious or unauthorized attempts, such as maybe repeated characters, common words, or sequential numbers. Now, based on this criteria, the system will calculate a score that reflects the strength and the security of the password. The score will be compared to a predefined threshold determining whether the password change request is approved or denied. And it does that in a number of steps. The first of it is what is called the fuzzy matching. Now, in fuzzy matching, the system compares the normalized password with the passwords on the global and the custom banned password list. And this allows for a small difference, in this case, a single edit distance between the strings. Now, in this way, the system can detect passwords that are too similar to the ones on the list and go ahead to reject them. Now, one way to prevent users from choosing weak passwords would be to compare their input with a list of banned passwords. So let's assume that we have a list of banned passwords such as A, B, C, D, E, and F, for example. Now, these variations may not be very easy to crack. So these variations do not match the banned password list exactly, but of course they may be close to it. So they could differ by a character. For example, rather than if we have this as a list of on the list of banned passwords, and a user chooses a password such as A, B, C, D, E, F, and rather than put an F, the user goes ahead to put a G. Now we can use the edit distance to detect if the password is too similar to the banned password. For instance, if the edit distance, like we can see here, is 1, in this case, the user replaced F with G, or in another case, the user can replace the password by simply omitting the last character itself. So we see here that the edit distance is 1 or less, and therefore the password that will be rejected. So the password is rejected because we have an edit distance of 1. That means one of the characters has just been changed, either by a replacement with another character, or by totally removing the character in the first place. So let's move on to the third thing that EntraID can do, which is the substring matching. Now, to prevent users from choosing passwords that contain their personal or organizational information, the normalized password will be subject to substring matching. Now, the substring matching process will compare the password with the user's first and last name and the last name of the tenant. However, the comparison is not performed when the password is validated within a domain controller environment in a hybrid setup that involves some on-premises systems. So for us to illustrate how substring matching works, let's have a hypothetical case. Let's suppose that a user is by name Joe, and he chooses a password such as this one. So he chooses a password such as this. Now, the system will then apply a normalization process to the password, removing the lowercases and uppercase letters, and then, of course, it will do normalization as we explained previously, and then the password will become Joe 1, 2, 3, for example. So the next thing the system will now do is the system will check if the password contains any substring that matches the personal information of the user, such as the name of the username, the email address, and so on. Now, in this case, the user is named Joe and his name is Joe. Now, so even when the password Joe123 is not on the banned password list, then of course the system will reject the password because it contains a substring that matches the user's personal information. In this case, the name Joe is part of the password. So this will be done to prevent easy guessing or cracking of passwords by attackers who may have access to some of the user details. So how will we now have the scores calculated? Now, the next step will be to identify all of the instances of banned passwords in the user's normalized new password. Now, points will be assigned based on some criteria. For example, if the user's normalized new password contains a banned password or a substring, then 1 point will be reduced from each occurrence. For example, if the banned password is the word password, and the user uses a password by just appending 1, 2, 3, 4 to the word password. In this case, since the word password is on the banned list, 1 point will be removed. Now, if the user's new normalized password is the word password written twice, such as password and password, for example, then 2 points will be removed from the score. Now, if the user's normalized password contains a banned password as a subsequence, then 0.5 points will be removed from each occurrence. In this case, a subsequence is a sequence that can be derived from another sequence by deleting some or no elements without changing the order of the remaining elements. For example, if the banned password is password, and then the user has a normalized, the user has a new password that he writes as maybe, for example, P4SS W0RD, for example, then when this value is normalized, it becomes the word password, and then points will be removed from there. And if the normalized new password contains a banned word that is an anagram, now an anagram is a word that is formed by rearranging the letters of another word. For example, if the banned password is the word password, and the user now chooses a password that is something like this. Okay, you can see that this word is an anagram of the word password, then zero point 0.5 points will be reduced from the password. So at the end of the day, the total number of points deducted from the user's normalized new password will then be subtracted from the initial score of 10 to get the final score of the user's normalized new passwords. Now, passwords with a score of 5 points or higher will be accepted. When the point is lower than 5 points, then the password will be rejected. So within the console, what will the user see? Now, when a user tries to reset or change a password to something that will be banned, then one of the error messages will be displayed. It could display, for example, the first error message here, that is, unfortunately, your password contains a word, a phrase, or pattern that makes your password easily guessable. So please try again with a different password. Or it would give the second message, which is, we've seen that password too many times before, so choose something harder to get, or it would give you the third message here, which is choose a password that's harder for people to guess. So in the next section of this video, we are going to get into the console. We are going to actually demonstrate how these things work, how to set the global, how what the global banned password list looks like, how to create a custom banned password list, and then we'll go ahead and try to test how these things work to see how it is validated. So please keep watching to the end to see how this will work. All right, so we are in the Entra ID console, and as we can see here, we are in the home screen, like we talked about in the previous video. But before we get into configuring a custom band password list, let's just take note of some of the following. Let's go to the identities area and click on overview. We'll just take a note of some of the things here. We can see within the basic information that we have the name of our organization as Contoso, and we can see the details, the tenant ID, the primary domain, the license type, and all of those things. For us to go ahead and configure the custom band password list, we will be going to the protections area, and we'll be clicking on authentication methods. So from authentication methods, it takes us to the policies tab within the manage page. But what we want to look at here is password protection. Like we said earlier on, for the global password list, it is applied automatically to every user in Microsoft Entra. There's nothing to enable, there's nothing to configure, and there's nothing to disable. We cannot disable it, in fact. So it is applied to all users when they change or reset their own password through Microsoft Entra ID. So there is nothing for us to do right here. So that takes us to the custom, which is where we are now, the custom band password in this case. So, like we said within the previous video, custom band password list here means that our organization wants to improve their security. They want to add customizations on top of the global band password list. So, for us to be able to do this, we have to use the custom band password list. And the terms that we add to this list should be focused on organization specific terms, such as maybe if we've got any brand name for our organization, we are going to be including it there. If we've got any products and their names, we want to include it. Things like location for the maybe the headquarters of the company, some internal terms within the company, and some company specific abbreviations. So when we add these terms to the list, they are combined with the terms in the global password list. So password change or reset events are then validated against the combined set of this banned password list. So that's exactly what we are going to be doing in the next couple of slides. So, but before we do that, we have to make some assumptions. And some of the assumptions we are going to make is, well, our organization is named Contoso, like we saw in the previous screen. And we want to assume that the company is based in the United Kingdom and has its headquarters in London. And it makes a product. And let's say it makes a product called wafers. We'll just call the name of the product wafers. So it is going to, well, be counterproductive for us to secure or try to block specific variations of the terms, such as maybe we put in contoso and then we add values or append values to it, or we put in contoso and add the headquarters and all of that, or we just sit down and try to on our own add variations to those names. So rather, it will be better and more efficient for us to just go ahead and list things like the name of the company, the location of the company, the names of the products, and all of that. And that's exactly what we are going to be doing in this configuration. So we are signed into Microsoft EntraID Admin Center, and we've gone to the protection area, authentication methods page, and we are in password protection. So we want to set the option here to custom band passwords, enforce custom list. We want to go ahead and click on yes to enforce it. So that's one of the first things that we want to do. And then we want to also go ahead and do some additional things as well. For example, we are now going to go ahead to add the list of custom band passwords. But before we do that, there are certain considerations and limitations that we need to take note of. The first one is that custom band password list can contain up to 1,000 terms. So there's a maximum of 1,000 terms that we can add to this list. That's the first thing that we want to know. The second thing we need to point out is that the list is case insensitive. So that means the case, however we write the list, it doesn't have any respect for the case. And then another thing we want to know is that it considers common characters such as O and zero, such as A and at. So it treats those characters as if they were the same thing. And then the next thing we want to know is that the minimum string length is 4 characters. That means we can have a minimum of 4 characters within the list, and we can have a maximum of 16 characters within the list. So we want to go ahead and specify some of the entries in our list. For example, remember we said our company is called Contoso, and then we want to go ahead and say the company is headquartered in London. And then we want to go ahead and say our company has a product called wafers, for example, and all of that. If we go ahead and say that our company has headquarters all over the United Kingdom, maybe they've got headquarters for example, they've got headquarters in Leeds. We want to go ahead and, they've got branch offices in Leeds, I beg your pardon. We want to go ahead and add that. If we have um, another product and other different kinds of things we want to add, we just go ahead and add them as well here to the list. So those are some of the things we want to be looking at as we move on. So we want to leave enable password protection on Windows Server Active Directory here, because we do not have a hybrid environment. So we want to go ahead and select no as that, and that is basically all that we have to do here. Remember, we've got to just add a custom band password list to this list. Remember again, the minimum is 4, the maximum is 16, and we can have up to 1,000 items within our list. And once we are done with that, all we've got to do is click on save. We also, after we've saved, we need to be aware of something, and that is sometimes it can take several hours for updates to the custom band password list to be applied. sometimes up to 24 hours. And if we are operating a hybrid environment, we may also want to deploy Entra password protection to on-premises environments. But in our own special case here, we do not operate a hybrid environment. So the next thing we want to do is to go ahead and check uh, whether these are custom uh, password, ban password list has been enforced. We'll be going to test this by actually going to log in and trying to use variations of items within this list to test that to test if our list is working. So please just pay attention and hold and while keep watching while we view the results in the next demonstration. So we'll see if our configuration actually works. All right, so we are back in Microsoft EntraID. We want to test some of the password-related policies that we created. So before we do that, we'll go to the All Users page, and we want to go ahead and choose the user that will be testing our policy with, and that user is a user by the name of Grady. So I'll go ahead and look for Grady. I'll go to Grady's username. I'll get there. And I want to reset the password for Grady. So I click on reset password. It prompts me with an information that the user will be assigned a temporary password, and that password has got to be changed on the next sign in. For me to display the temporary password, I want to go ahead and reset the password. So I click on reset, and it gives me the temporary password, which I'll copy. So the next thing I want to do is I want to now go and sign in to my apps.microsoft.com as Grady. I'll go ahead and sign in as Grady. I'll click on next. And it prompts me to enter the password, which I'll just paste. That's the password I copied. We can see that here. That's the password I copied. So I'll go ahead and click on sign in. It prompts me to change the password. Now, before I go ahead and test some of the custom policies that I configured, I want to go ahead and test the global policy that we see here, the banned password list. So let's go ahead and test it before I go ahead and test the custom policy. You'd recall that we said that there are a couple of policies that we can create, that is created for us by default. That's the global banned password list. So I want to go ahead and now choose a password of password. I'm going to go ahead and see, try this password. That's password 123. So I'll go ahead and try that. I'll just go ahead and confirm. I want to go ahead and be sure that it's the same thing. Okay, so looks like it's the same. So I'll go ahead and click on sign in. Now, what we are doing now is to test the global banned password list. So this is not part of the custom banned password list. This is part of the global. And remember that we said that the global banned password list is automatically applied to all users within Entra, and we don't need to do anything. We cannot disable it. So let's go ahead and test that. I'll click on sign in. And sure enough, it tells me that we've seen that password too many times. We want to choose something else. So we see that that does not work. Let's go ahead and try to, well, push it a bit more. Let's just try and put in another password like Grady. Or I'll just give it Grady. Okay, I'll go ahead. That's the password I want to use, Grady at 123, but I'm replacing the A with an at. So let's see if that works. Again, let's see. It tells me it doesn't match. So let's go back and be sure that okay, so this does match now. So let's see if this will work. It tells me again, and that we've seen that password too many times. So we need to choose something else. So we see that even if we did not explicitly configure some of this password settings, the global band password list takes care of it. Okay, so I want to now go ahead and test the custom custom band password settings. Remember that we had some settings. We had put in Contoso as part of the custom band password. We put in wafers, we put in Leeds, and we put in London. So let's try ahead. Let's try and see if we are going to be able to use any of those passwords, and let's see the kind of results we're going to get. So I'll try the first one. I'll go ahead and try to sign in with Contoso. I'll just go ahead and confirm that. Okay, let's see if that works. I click on sign in, and it tells me again that that is not going to work. All right, let's go ahead and try something else. I'll try London. Again, that doesn't work. So we see that once we do our settings properly, there are lots of restrictions preventing us from using some of the passwords that are either on the global banned password list or on the custom banned password list. So that takes us to the end of our demonstration. So we can see that Microsoft Entra has a lot of features that's going to be preventing us from signing in with passwords that are considered to be vulnerable. So thank you very much for your time and everything we've discussed. I'm going to be dropping some links in the description at the bottom of this video. So keep a date. Again, we are going to be posting something equally very interesting next week. Thank you very much for your time and see you in the next one.